Hi, Mike. Hello, welcome. A rare opportunity where you get, have you got the sound down on that?
I'll do that just now. Good thinking.
Otherwise it'll echo.
Sound is down.
There we go. Welcome back to the live stream. My name's Matt Bailey, National Ambassador. I'm joined with our Cellar Master and New South Wales State Manager, Society Director, Person, Whiskey and Wisdom, Structural Engineer, all round, Andrew Derbidge.
That's a long introduction.
I don't know where else to go with that. We're sitting here in the Grace Hotel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Sitting here at the Grace Hotel, hope you can hear us. We've just finished the AUISC.
Yes.
What does that stand for?
Australian International Spirits Competition. Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
We're missing a U.
That's the Australian.
Oh, right.
AU.
Okay. Long day.
Australian Unlisted.
Unlisted International.
Yeah.
So we tasted today.
Ooh. What did we get to, do you reckon?
I was going to say like 60.
I'd have said minimum. Yeah.
60 minimum spirits today. It gives you a weird sensation, I'll be honest, because I didn't drink any of the whiskey or any of the spirits. I drank it, I didn't swallow any of it. Because
we spittooned all day, which is just as well, because we got here at 9 in the morning.
Just before,
Although first drink was a bit after that, say 10 o'clock. So going solidly from 10 till 6.
Yeah, 10 till 6, which was fantastic. It's even just past 6. It was like 6:30 for those liqueurs at the end. Yeah,
that's true. They sprung some surprise drinks on us at the end that we weren't expecting.
So it's a good 8+ hours of tasting spirit. But I thought it might be a cool opportunity for us to talk to you about what some of those challenges are when doing these kind of competitions, and if you have any questions as well, what it is to do a spirits competition. I know you've done some before.
Yes.
And how did you think this fared today? I mean, it's in terms of the overall for you.
It's the longest one I've been involved with, and it's also been the one where there's been the most diversity of spirits. So it was a spirits competition, and there were all sorts of things in the room, from gins to vodkas to rums to whiskey. And when I say whiskey, I mean the whole spectrum of whiskies as well. I say the whole spectrum. In fact, there was no Irish, but we had. I don't recall there was an Irish whiskey.
I don't think it was an Irish whiskey.
And these were all tasted blind, by the way, so we had no idea, but they came in brackets. So I've done plenty of whiskey judging before, and I've been a judge in whiskey competitions and the like. But this was the first one where it was the whole gamut. And Matt and I found ourselves, and we were put in a group that dealt specifically with the whiskey category. Other people were put in groups that dealt with the vodkas and the gin. So the judges were kind of categorised in their area of expertise. So we missed the coloured gins and
pink gin, blue gin,
and some of the liqueurs.
There were some creme liqueurs on one table.
Yeah, that's true. So we tasted various flights that included an international range. So we were told afterwards. Obviously you weren't told much about it till after the flight finished. But Indian, Taiwanese, Japanese, lots of Australian, lots of Scotch, and even Scotch was then split into categories, obviously peated and unpeated and sherried and so on. And then we came home with a strong contingent of American whiskies.
Some of which were outstanding.
Some were. I'm embarrassed to say, I shouldn't say this on live feed, but I think my highest score today went to an American whiskey.
That's Andrew Derbidge saying that,
yeah,
by the way.
I'm sorry. Palate fatigue kicked in. What can I say? Can you make those questions out? Yeah, my eyesight's not that good.
No, I'm going to grab some of these questions coming through. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Whiskey Saurus, 45 Fin, SM Yan, Dram, SMWS Glasgow joined.
Oh, good to see you.
Hey, that's got to be a new account.
Our Glaswegian friends.
Scott Fitzsimons, Muzzman, Lee Wallace. Scott asks, what sort of pen did you use?
Oh, unbelievable.
You know what? I'm going to give you a live preview, Scotty. It's a Grace Hotel pen.
But in Society Green.
Society Green.
That is the Society Green colour.
But it was a Grace branded hotel pens today. So there you go. That was. Hope that gets your question. Nick Husek, Monarch Perth, SMWS Benelux, Great Beyond Coburg. Tough day, I understand. Apparently all you need to do to become a judge is pretend to own a distillery. You know what, I'm not going to delve too much into that comment.
Can't comment on that one, mate. That's,
I wouldn't know, but SM Yan.
well, it's a serious question. I thank you, SM Yan. We can rely on him for the good questions, actually.
Liam, you're the best.
Yeah.
How do you avoid exhausting your taste for so much tasting, or exhausting your palate, I presume, for so much tasting?
Well, we did have to rely on a trade secret halfway through the day. We had to resort to a cleansing ale.
Yes.
An IPA. It was interesting. The first half of the day in the session went well, and this is a topic we might go into a little bit more depth in just a moment, but we then came to the Australian whiskies. And if I was to be very general and summarise that whole lot, the Australian whiskies were characterised by being very woody and tannic, and the tannins built on us. And I'm not speaking on behalf of Matt and myself, I'm speaking on behalf of the 8 that were at our table that were dealing with this. And all 8 of us just increasingly found our mouths becoming, and our taste buds being increasingly weighed down by these tannins that just built and built and built, layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And I have to do that because I can't do the hair flick. So this is my hand gesture. So at one stage I said, geez, an IPA would be good. And my colleague here jumped up and grabbed a couple of schooners of IPA for the table. And that definitely refreshed and helped our mouth. And then there were breaks for tea and coffee and a good lunch break as well. So there were chances to wash and cleanse your palate and do things like that throughout the day.
If I might share as well a tip on how I managed to go through and assess the whiskies that I had in front of me, because everyone does it differently. You might find this interesting, is that if we're presented with like 4 at a time, and most of them were 4 flights of 4 at a time, it was like I'd taste 1, 2, I'd nose 1, 2, 3, 4, I'd write some initial thoughts on each quite quickly, but then I'd go back and really dig into each one a bit closer, and then I'd just focus on the one I liked the most at the end. So the one with the least amount of flaws, or the one with no flaws, or the one which was just a great whiskey. So it meant that. And how did you approach it? Because I sort of I sped through each 4, but then went back to 1 and slowed down for each one.
No, I was very. This is the one I'm going to assess. Okay. Nose, palate, wrote my notes, wrote my score, moved on to the next one, didn't go back.
Right. And do you find that helped?
In the context of judging and scoring, yes, because I think if you have the flight of 4 in front of you and you nose them all first, straight away you're already going, oh, I think I like that one more than the other. And you're already putting comparative scores in before you've actually started. So just by saying, let's just try this one by itself first, judge it on its merits, then move on to the next one, I found that took out any sort of preconceived bias that you have. And to be honest, and we talked about this on the table, sometimes that preconceived bias kicks in just when they bring them to the table, and straight away you're looking at colour. And there were a few where there was a range of colour, and you couldn't help but look at the dark one and go, "Ooh, that one might be nice." And
yeah.
I think with one exception today, none of them were.
I think both you and I have talked about colour, especially in perception, and I think even tasting out of clear glassware like we did today, it's like you look at the colour of the whiskies, you look at it, and there was a few moments today where we were drinking quite light whiskies.
Yes.
And you can see a tray of darker spirit coming around, and you're like, "Ooh, that's going to be exciting."
Yes.
Yeah, I guess.
Or, oh my God, not again. That was the.
Yeah. When will it ever stop?
There was some very heavily sherried, very tannic whiskies today, and one is nice.
Yeah.
To pretend to 15 of them, it was a challenge.
I will admit as well. I mean, it's true. You said it before at the table. The most challenging whiskies today were the Australian ones.
They were, and again, that's not just how the two of us found it. That was unanimous across our table. Yes,
yeah. Let me grab some more of these questions. But palate fatigue is a great topic. Great Bjorn Kerberg says it certainly is, because it's quite interesting how quickly or how not quickly your palate fatigues depending on how you approach these spirits. And in my case, adding a lot of water to each one, especially as we're getting into higher proof ones, so I could dig down more at wine proof, as I call it, so you can find the flaws a bit easier without being masked by the ethanol. But
that was interesting too, because I did not add a drop of water the whole day. I took it as it came.
Right, yeah, okay.
Again, personal choice. There's no right or wrong there. It's just how I felt.
Yeah. SMN, if you drink 400 malts a day, testing 25 is nothing. Yeah, we both drink about 400 malts a day, don't we?
I'm up to 410 at the moment.
All right.
not that I'm competitive.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, no competitive nature at all, sure. I'm only at 405, so cut me some slack here.
Okay, yeah.
Renestige join, good to see you. Muzzman says, Murray asks, it's also hard to maintain consistency in scoring analysis over a day, isn't it?
I didn't find that. I know a couple of other judges did. They said that. Where the challenges lay was probably not so much in the duration of time and being consistent across time. It was trying to be consistent across categories. You know, let's be honest, Matt and I are both very much malt whiskey and Scotch whiskey sort of people. So when the bourbons came out and some of the other ones that had different cereal bases, I found the challenge was trying to calibrate relative to that. And this was, the guy who was the chairman and the judges made a point at the start. This is not about what you like or what you prefer. It's about, is this good spirit? Is it representative of the style that it's trying to be? Is it a good example? And does it have any flaws? And whether I like a certain style of whiskey or not, I can certainly detect whether it's flawed or whether it's a good example of it. But keeping that consistency across the categories is interesting. And you know, a good example, if you give, we were scoring out of 100, so if you had gave a score of 80 to a Scotch whiskey, is that the same as giving a score of 80 to a bourbon, which we tried later in the day?
That's a hard one. I mean, I think to answer that one from my perspective is, I mean, the scoring, the only trick was consistency in scoring for me. As in, like, if I gave a Scotch whiskey an 80, and if I thought that bourbon whiskey was also an 80, then I didn't scale it down or up accordingly. I think that's important. But yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
Just also to give you some insight into that scoring process, if you wanted to, there was a table of scores, and you could put a certain mark out of 20 for nose, a certain, was it 30 for palate, something for finish, something for general, and that would add up to 100. And so some of the judges were giving a score for each category and adding up. I didn't employ that method. I prefer just to say, well, that's my score. And were you the same, or were you?
Actually, I started by using numbers in the like nose, palate, finish sort of categories, but then I just end up actually leaving markers of up and down arrows in each one. So if there was a whiskey that I thought had a great nose but a really disappointing palate, and there were a couple of those, I'd put like an up arrow in the nose category and a down arrow in the palate. Yeah. And that was just my own reference of scoring it after I come back to it, because as I said, I was coming back to each one as I was going. Derbidge on the money there says, Great Beyond, consistency is easy. Use the spirit spider. Yeah, well, I mean, Bailey, why not taste as people would drink it? Very good point there, Great Beyond. And in the other categories that were on taste, which we weren't involved in, people were drinking it as they would drink it, as you saw. So there are a few examples of where gins were being presented with tonics.
That's right. And I don't think they were scoring without tonic and with tonic, was it? It was actually you had to judge this with the tonic, because that's how it was used.
I think there's a fair few gins that were presented with tonic.
There were a fair few gins that I think bloody needed a tonic too, just looking at the colour and the smell of some of them.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's kind of like that's. Look, let's be honest. A lot of people drink whiskey neat, but a lot of people would mix it with Coke or ice or whatever they want to do with it. But a lot, like, in the context of gin, most people drink gin with tonic. I think is a fair statement to make.
True.
So they were assessing it on how people drink it, so they're already doing that. It's consistent and transparent. The spirit spider, yes. You don't rate a suit until it's on a human. That's a good analogy. I like that one. I mean, you can rate a suit on a rack, I guess you could.
I was going to make a bad rack joke there, but we'll move on.
We'll move on. So that's really sort of our thoughts tonight on doing spirit assessment. And really just like, I think one of the best tips that was given today by one of the other judges was, or one of the organisers I should say, was trust your first instinct. Steve Beale, who was the master judge today, started by saying, giving people some pointers and some tips on how to do judging, which was really useful. And one of the things he said was, trust your first judgment. And I find that, especially with guessing whiskies or with assessing them or rating them, it's often really good. Do you find the same? Do you actually get a lot out of a first assessment of a whiskey, and then, like, the more you come back to it, sometimes you're like, oh, I kind of liked it the first time, and my first score of 85 was, I'm now being swayed by other factors.
Can I give you a nerd's answer?
No, that's what we're here for.
Which didn't come out today so much, but if you're drinking a whiskey that's, say, at 40% ABV, I think when you pour it, what's there is what you're going to get. We know, certainly from the old days of the local tasting panel on the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, that society bottlings that are cask strength take a bit of time to open up. Older whiskies take a bit of time. So you can pour that first one, and to answer your question, that first impression of that whiskey, that whiskey can be very different in 5 minutes' time. And so there is a difference between that first impression, trust your instinct, and what it grows to be in 5 minutes later.
Yeah,
and I can give you countless examples of whiskies that the Society's local tasting panel here in Australia encountered, where we had our first sniff and went, oh, that's not right, put it down. And we went back to it 10 minutes later, and it was stunning. And the ability to do that is lost in a tasting thing like today, where we had to pretty much go on the spot. You were given about, what do you reckon, 2 to 3 minutes per whiskey?
Yeah, 2 to 3 per whiskey. Yep.
About that. But then again, we didn't have any sort of 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds amongst us to see that bear out. So I think when you look at the age statements of roughly what we had today, it was about right.
Yeah.
I feel. I don't think any whiskey had an injustice done to it.
No. I don't think any injustice. It's just it was quite interesting to see. One of the points that Steve Beale made was to assess each whiskey on its own merit rather than comparing to others on the table, and I think that's something that's really hard to do personally, because you sometimes taste things and you say, oh, I'm giving that a score because of this, but then you taste something else on the table and you're like, oh, now that one doesn't seem as good, or that one really amplifies how much better the other one is. And it's sort of, you're starting to make sort of even just comparison, and I think that's a tricky one to navigate.
The other interesting thing that popped up today was personal bias. Obviously, as a judge, you have to take that out of the equation. So if you really, really like peated whiskies, you've got, when we came to that category, some people almost had to sort of scale back their personal bias. We had one flight today that was the international whiskies that were very heavily sherried. And I think we picked up by the end of the day that we were dealing with some Cavaland stock, some Paul John, and some Japanese that were very heavily sherried. And for that particular bracket, another judge joined our table and he said, this is my jam, this is what I like. And that was great, he got to try them, but you wonder how much he may have skewed the overall thing by bringing what was clearly a personal bias for him to the table.
It is interesting how much you've got to separate personal bias to actual diagnosis of that whiskey, if you like. And,
It was interesting when we came to the sherry bombs, the sherry monsters. That flight probably got the best response from around the table.
Yeah, it did, and the peated ones. Yeah, which I didn't rate very highly.
No, I didn't get carried away by any of the peated ones either, and we found out afterwards what they were too. So that kind of explains it.
Yes, that kind of explains it.
And we'll leave that there.
Not naming any names. Okay.
So as a result of this competition today, there'll be results published in due course, and by the time all the judges' scores are added up and assessed, they will be awarding gold medals and silver and bronzes and so on. So I look forward to seeing the outcome of all of that.
Yeah, that'd be really cool to see, because it's the results of what we've just spent a whole day working on. So rather than just sort of having a bit more understanding about why they got those awards and how they came to those scorings. Yeah, and especially considering the weighted average of how those scores work out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another thing I'd say, and you've probably picked this up in a fair bit of talk that goes on in some of the whiskey Facebook groups and the like. There's a bit of what's the word? Mental blank. Not a good thing to have a mental blank when you're in the middle of a live feed, by the way. There's concern about the accuracy and validity of some of these competitions, and a lot of people feel that sometimes it's a pay to play. If you turn up, you get an award. Everyone gets something. What I did like about today is that I didn't perceive any of that. I think the judging was very fair. It was done completely blind. So again, there was no product bias. If you knew you really liked distillery XYZ, well, too bad we didn't find out about that.
Yeah.
It was a reasonably good mix. So, when we all look back in 10 years at the various competitions and spirits awards around the world, and the intention is for this one to, the organisers of this would like it to become an ongoing serious affair. I think this one will have some integrity. That's probably the word I was after before. There's a lot of awards where the integrity is questioned, and I think this one played it down the straight and narrow, and can hold its head high and say these are genuine results. I think when you looked at the diversity of judges and where we all came from, and we were all people in the industry in one form or another, quite a few guys and girls who were bar people working behind the bar, a couple of writers, people in the trade, some brand ambassadors, people who worked in retail as well. So it was a good mix of palates and people and experiences, and it was a good diverse range. It wasn't, I think if the judges had all just been, Scotch whisky brand ambassadors, that would have not have been a good cross-section to judge across the category. So it worked well, I thought.
No, I think it did. I think it was very impartial. I think it was very, very honest scoring and very honest way it was presented as well. And especially having that sort of like level of expertise from Steve was great, and having that sort of understanding of how to best approach these rather than, and he suggested he's quite against all those pay to play, especially even worse, pay to win style sort of awards, and they do exist.
He was dismissive of them very quickly, actually, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. He was like, no names, as in like he didn't say any names. But he's very dismissive of them and didn't want to talk about them. But yeah, no, today was great, and we can delve into more about how to properly assess whiskey, because a lot of what we talk about is the sheer enjoyment of, but sometimes it's nice to really sort of pick one apart and see what's great about it, what's not great about it, and how you'd score it, and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, that was an interesting day.
Harry Archie Rose, good to see him. Muzzman78 says, sounds like it was an interesting exercise in spirit analysis. I think that sums it up.
It does.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. I think that's going to be our live for tonight.
Yep.
Andrew and I, we should do this more often.
We should.
Yeah.
As in spend the whole day drinking in the city and...
Yeah, when you phrase it like that, actually, that sounds pretty good. Yes, we should spend the whole day drinking more often. And day drinking, morning and day drinking, and then do a live stream. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you for live tomorrow night, and I'll catch you all on the other side. Cheers.
Indeed. Bye for now.